Welcome, everybody, to the Weekly Grind Podcast. I am your host, Keith Fabbri, with my co-hosts, Tommy Styles and Doctortoddlee. Guys, how we doing?
Pretty good, Keith. How's it going?
Good, man. And tonight, guys, we have with us our guests for tonight, IFBB Pro, Justin Compton, making his second appearance on the show. Justin, welcome to the Weekly Grind.
What's up, guys?
We were able to trick you into coming on again, so we appreciate it. And tonight, guys, we're going to be talking a little bit of diet and training for contest prep the Justin Compton way. So basically, we're going to ask you some questions, Justin, about how you go about contest prep from the training and diet standpoint. And you can feel free to talk about anything you want in regards to that. I got some questions for you that we'll start with. But why don't you, first and foremost, Justin, give us a little bit of background maybe on your contest prep and stuff, things that you like to do that might be different from somebody else. I'll let you just go ahead first on that, and then we'll start asking some questions.
You know, when I first got started competing, Jason Theobald was the first guy who ever mentored me when I was 19 years old. I think he goes by like Scooby Snacks or something like that online.
Yep, we had him on a couple weeks ago.
Jason's a great guy. And I worked with Shelby Starnes and I worked with Fabbri. So that kind of built the base of my knowledge of, where things is at right now. But I kind of started evolving into my, my own unique techniques after 2013. And I feel like that's when I was actually able to dial my body in the best possible. I took certain methods that worked from one coach and methods that didn't work, and I kind of put my own little formula together that seems to be working really good for myself, and it works really good for my clients too. So everything from, the nutrition standpoint to the training standpoint. For the training, 99% of that was always done by me. I never had a lot of guidance on that. That's stuff that I've learned through trial and error and just the years of being in the gym. So, like, my training programs are very unique. Anyone that's actually seen them they're very demanding. That's probably why you guys don't see a lot of videos of me on the internet, because I train alone. 90% of the time, I'm always alone.
Right.
I never really enjoyed training partners, and I train really fast as well. So you see a lot of sets there, but, like, I'm getting 40 sets done in an hour.
Jeez, Pete's.
And I don't really have time to sit down and do, audio and film while I'm doing it. So, I prefer to just be alone when I was in the gym. Like, I was there and I would just put my tunnel vision on and I would just go.
Right.
There was times, I'm not going to lie, that I would have to pep talk myself in the parking lot to go in there and do that. But, there was some stressful times in prep that I didn't want to do it, but I got it done. Once I get started and warmed up, it was always enjoyable for me.
Right. All right. Well, let's hop into these questions here. You mentioned your training and stuff, and we'll talk about that. How does your training change throughout the prep? Do you, obviously you have the way you train in the off season. Is that pretty much the same? Do you do a few different things within training? Some people like to do a little bit different stuff during prep. And then how does that change as you get closer to the show? Is there something that you do specifically?
I actually like to almost train about the same for off season versus contest prep. Like, when I'm in the off season, I have more food in, so I have more gas in the tank.
Right.
Theoretically, I don't increase my rep range. I don't purposely increase my volume. If anything, my volume decreases, which I'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
But I keep the exercise the same. I do compound exercises all the way till, Wednesday before the show. And typically I go all the way to failure, all the way to the show as well.
Okay.
Maybe the last week I won't go past failure. I won't do any like rest pause or drop sets or supersets. I'll just go to straight failure. And my reasoning behind that is, my last week of a show, I flatten out very, very easily. Anyone that's followed me for a while knows they see the amount of food, the consumption that I have to do in order to look the way I look.
Right.
So when I don't like to go into a show depleted. I think that is a very dumb idea to do peak week and deplete in the beginning. Like, what's the purpose of depleting only to fill back out. Because if you're in shape, you're in shape. Like all this voodoo shit is just not going to do anything. Like if you're not ready, you're not ready. So I like to stay as full as I can going into it. That way I can just cruise on in those last couple of days once I stop training. So I don't want to do anything to purposely increase my caloric expenditure, so to say.
Right.
Like on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday before a show, I'll mostly just go in and do straight sets.
Okay.
But, that being said, my calories and carbs and everything really, really vary a lot from off-season to prep. When I get into the deeper part of my prep, I just, it's a feeling. It's not something that you can coach someone with. It's not something you can explain to people. But when you're just flat and you're tanked in the gym, like enough is enough.
Right.
I may have in my head that I'm going to do 15 sets for triceps and 15 sets for biceps and, I don't know, do 8 sets for calves and 8 sets for abs. And it may be half that by the time I actually get there and do it. Because if I feel like I'm not even if I can't feel the muscle when I'm training, and it's almost like the pump is having negative effects, like it's going away.
Right.
You're done. Like I feel like that's my body telling me enough is enough. It's time to move on. So as I get leaner and as my calories go lower, my volume essentially kind of goes down a little bit. My frequency doesn't go down. I still keep that, that variable the same.
Right.
But again, I don't see the point in flattening myself out on purpose if I don't have to. Okay. I feel like my fat loss is, I contribute the majority of that to my cardio because my food sources doesn't really change that much from off season to prep. And like I said, my training style, the volume goes down a little bit, but it's not significant. If you were to be watching me in the gym and you were just paying attention to my training, you would not have an idea whether I'm off season or contest prep. I mean, obviously by looking at me, you can tell, but just from the training style, you wouldn't.
Right. So you're staying heavy as heavy as you possibly can safely all the way to the show, which makes sense. And that usually is probably the best method that I've had. And I know other people have had too, is staying as heavy as possible with the compound movements all the way to the end and not trying to do anything drastically different. Because that's how you put the muscle on in the first place. Why would you want to do something different?
That's my point. That's how I got bigger in the off season. So why would I want to change that going into prep?
If you lose that stimulation, you're going to lose that muscle.
Yeah, I don't lift in like a 3 to 4 rep range. Like you said, I lift as heavy as possible within a certain limit. And I always typically try to go, I'm always doing something like an advanced type technique, whether it's rest pause, whether it's just simply like just a hold and a squeeze on something, or drop set, superset, giant set. Depending on, obviously that depends on the gym you're in. You're not going to go to LA Fitness and be doing giant sets because you're not going to get the equipment that you need.
Right.
But around here where I'm at, mostly it's dead when I train, so I have the whole gym to myself.
Sure.
And I just incorporate the same philosophy from off season right on over into prep. It's just sometimes it gets scaled down a little bit.
Sure. You're pulling the volume back instead of going in once you feel your body starting to flatten out, and that pump is a huge
mistake that a lot of people make is when they're in prep, they think because the show is coming, they got to do more and more and more.
Yep.
And that's how you see a lot of guys drop extensive amounts of weight. You see a guy that's 250 and he's relatively lean at 250, and all of a sudden he competes at 198. It's like, where the fuck did 50 pounds go?
Right.
And he basically just wasted himself away.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I do similar stuff where I'm just, I'm training heavy into the show. And Todd, I know you do the same thing. You're training heavy right into the show, where it's basically, instead of going in and saying, I might be doing 12 sets for chest, but, if I'm at 9 sets and I don't need to do that last exercise because I've already got a pump, and I can get out of here in a half hour and save some energy for the rest of the day. And I'm already, accomplished what I need to have accomplished at this point. There's no sense in doing more because there might be negative returns at that point.
Yeah, many a year I've broken PRs 3 or 4 days out from the show. That I don't even pull the carbs down to the last week. I'm pretty much at 250, 300 carbs all the way into the show. And the only thing that changes for me is, like you said, I add in cardio. So I'm adding in negative calories, but I'm keeping my calories high. So the leptin levels don't drop and the ghrelin levels don't rise. You're not prone to cheat.
Right.
And it's like, plus, if you're doing cardio, you're like, I fucking hate waking up early and looking at all these people when I'm doing my cardio, because I go to a gym where I don't like people, so that no one talks to me. I don't want to walk into a gym where I like people and be a cocksucker to them and be like, don't look at me, fuck you. And then you have to like be their friend for the next 3 years. You don't know. You just pick a new gym you've never been to, you buy a membership, and then you wear like blood splattered on your face, and you go in there like early in the morning, you do your cardio, and you're like, while you're thinking there, you're like, well, I'm sure as fuck not going to cheat today because I went through all this for 200 goddamn calories.
Right.
I'm definitely not going to have like anything extra later.
Right.
Even though it's more of a metabolic machinery thing, it's just, like you said, the negative calories, plus, my cycle changes obviously between off season and the last few months of contest prep, what I'm adding in. Usually it's just the last 4 weeks where it gets aggressive, but that's because I never get more than the Lee Haney 10 pounds off stage weight.
Right.
Dorian himself, he was like, what, 15 pounds water, 15 pounds fat? He would go from 300 to 270.
Yeah.
So you lost, 5% fat and 5% of the water with the fat.
Right.
So you really aren't that big. So it shouldn't take more than 8 to 4 weeks to pull that off.
Yeah.
And, these 4 weeks to get.
I was always very blessed to be able to do that as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously it's genetically, and not everybody's the same, but it's again, like you said, it's knowing your body and knowing what your body's capable of doing and what it needs to do, because if you're doing what's necessary, and some people do the unnecessary at the end where they end up, shriveling up because they're doing more than what they need to do.
Yeah.
Tommy, you're pretty heavy right into the show too with your training, because I know you're a DC and you were working with doing some of the muscle rounds and that kind of stuff on this last prep. You kept that heavy right into the show, didn't you?
Oh, absolutely. I set a PR on rack pulls like 20 days out, so it was I listen to my body though. Like there's some stuff that I had to take deadlifts out like 5 weeks out. It just was becoming more negative than positive.
Right.
I had to check my ego, but yeah,
I did that.
I learned that young that you worked hard to get that muscle and you trained heavy, so don't change that. Don't do all this hocus pocus shit. Same thing with peak week, like Justin was saying. Don't try and limit your water and do all this crazy shit with salt. Like it's really not that complicated.
Right. All right, Justin, the next question is, do you utilize any kind of carb cycling?
Carb cycling?
Yes.
That's kind of a two-sided answer on this. Okay. Yes and no. So I don't ever have like a set, like I'm going to do 4 low days followed by a medium day and a high day. When I go into my prep, like this is me personally because I know my body well.
Right.
This is not necessarily how I coach other people because I'm not in the household with you.
Right.
I'm not in the gym with you. I don't see you every single living second of the day.
Right.
But for myself, I don't go into, the days with a plan. Like, what I'm saying? Nobody believes me when I say this. I actually won the SAC Pro with only 6 weeks of contest prep. And that was, by the way, that was like cruising dosages 6 weeks out too. So like I didn't like push the gas hard on that.
Jeez, oh Pete.
But my calories were somewhere like, I don't know, man, somewhere around like 700 grams of carbs a day, maybe 800.
Right.
And then I added in cardio. I didn't have to back them down that much. And eventually I got them down to like 400. And then all of a sudden my weight just started tanking. Like I'm dropping like pounds by the day.
Right.
So I don't necessarily schedule it like Wednesday and Saturday is a high carb day or a cheat day or anything like that. I always just play it by ear. Like, if you have a really crazy leg day, there's a good chance you're going to wake up 3 pounds lighter the next day. So that, in my opinion, might be a perfect opportunity for me to load back up on my glycogen levels.
Right.
Right.
So again, like I did carb cycle, but I didn't like have it on a set schedule. Like there was high days and low days, but it was all over the place.
Right. So you were doing a reactive carb cycle, basically reacting like how you look and how you feel on a daily basis, and just going by that. Yeah.
I've got a really large mirror at my house, and I've got really good lights in my house.
Well, it would have to be really large for you.
I've got a large mirror. I've got great lights. And I've got a doctor scale in my house. Like I don't like those digital scales because sometimes I could stand on them and it would read like 275. I could step off, wait 2 minutes, and then I'm 280 or I'm 270. Like
Right.
5-pound variance, that's bullshit. Like, I don't do that. So I always would wake up every morning when I'm in prep. I'd hop on the scale, and I'm like, okay, well, this is where I'm at. And I was like, let me go see how I look. And then I would pose for probably 15, 20 minutes sometimes. I mostly just did mandatories. Like, I'm not I don't have the moves like some guys. I mean, I'm not ashamed to say that my posing routines are maybe not be as static as some people.
Right.
But I did the mandatories because that's what wins the fucking show. Like,
right.
You can dance all you want, but that doesn't win the show.
They don't even judge it. So, yeah, what's it matter?
I would just pose and pose and pose and pose. Like, I had a timer on my phone. It was, I can't remember the name of this app that I had, but it had like a beep, like a text. And if you could go 20 seconds, and then it'll wait 5 seconds and go 20 seconds, and like you can set this up so you can pretend like the judges are calling the poses.
Oh, okay, cool.
And I used to do that every morning. And by the time I got done with my posing, I kind of had a gauge of that day. Either I need to go up in food or down in food, and I always logged my food. I always used Excel charts on my computer, so I was able to say, okay, this is what I did yesterday. And this is what I trained yesterday, and this is my cardio yesterday. This is what I need to do today.
Right.
Like, I change extremely fast when I'm in prep because, like when I won nationals, we had discussed that contest prep the last time we talked. I think me and Fabbri started that prep at like 12, 13 weeks out. I really don't think I got that much better from like 4 weeks out and on. Like, I was pretty much ready to go. So at that point, I knew my preps didn't need to be 10 or 12 weeks long. But if you're able to make a 30-pound change in 6 weeks, you realize that's happening very, very quickly. So there's going to be times you need to refuel, and there's times you need to step on the brakes.
Right. Okay. So, it's carb cycling, but it's completely reactive. It's not a scheduled out, too low, one high, or, whatever. You're going to you refeed when you need it. And if you look like you feel like you're a little bit, you're slowing down a little bit, then you can step on the gas a little bit more and restrict calories wherever they need to be restricted. That's a smart way to do it. And if you know your body, that's the best way to do it,
It was very difficult doing it because
it is.
I could never. You have to be adaptive to what you see in front of you. Every time you look in the mirror, you have to know what you're looking at because there was times like I would make my own changes and I would be like, okay, I'm going to do this for like 3 days, and then nothing would fucking happen. Like, I'd have to do it like 6 days. But then there was times that like I would be like, all right, I'm going to go nice and steady and slow, and then things just start falling down really fast.
Right.
It was completely unpredictable. So again, it's just about being how to react quickly and handle it.
Gotcha.
The data that you use is your previous day's weight, today's weight, the workout you did yesterday, the workout you're doing today, and how you felt, your pumps, and the look you have in your morning posing routine. So those are your data points, and that's what you use to determine if you're going up or down in carbohydrates.
The pumps can be a little bit... I don't necessarily go because there's times that I don't get a good pump, but I still look really good. So I don't really use the pump as a gauge. I try to use my strength as a gauge. Like, if I notice my strength is declining like rather quickly, that's not a good sign. Like, I'm typically just as strong at the beginning of prep as I am at the end of prep.
Yeah.
Okay. And your rep range is what, like 6 to 10 for upper body, 8 to 12 for lower body?
It really varies. Like, I like a wide variation on this. So I mix things up. Like, for example, workout 1, I may end up keeping the reps like in a 4 to 6 rep range, very, very heavy weight. And then the second time I train that body part, I may have it into a higher rep range of 15 to 20 to hit both muscle fiber types.
Right, and you give a 2-week recovery on the heavy weight load rather than doing heavy 3 weeks.
No. I never really gave a 2-week recovery. I pounded pretty hard when I was in prep.
But I mean, it's like if you did chest A at 5 reps and chest B at 17 reps, then when you wrap around to chest A again, isn't that a week later, or are you doing chest twice in 1 week?
I usually train, the only body part I didn't train twice a week was quads, because I've always been genetically blessed to have a great quad sweep, and I've had great detail in my legs. So I trained them hard that once a week, but I didn't I didn't feel necessary to have to train them twice a week. I didn't train arms twice a week. That was another one that I just did once.
Right.
But everything else I normally did twice. Sometimes I'd back shoulders off to once if I would go through these phases where I thought they were more overpowering, which clearly it was. But, I said back, chest, and hamstrings was the three that had to be hit twice a week for me.
Okay.
Yep. All right. What do you prefer for cardio? Do you use steady state, or is it hit cardio the way to go for you? Or is it a mixture?
For me personally, a good, slow, steady pace. A lot of people, when you watch me doing the cardio, you're like, man, he's really not doing shit. But when you weigh 275 pounds, it's not that hard to get heart rate up to 135.
No.
It's relatively easy to get yourself there. And I'm sweating and dripping, but I'm only walking like 2.5 miles an hour.
Right.
So, but when I do cardio, I actually did, in 2016, I had a elliptical at my house, and I did all the cardio at my house. There was maybe a few sessions, I think, for the Arnold. Matt had specifically, when I worked with him for a brief period of time, he specifically, I think, asked me about doing the stepper. And I personally don't feel that any one piece of cardio has an advantage over the other, because if you get your heart rate in the right zone, you're going to be getting the job done.
Right.
However, I do feel like certain pieces of equipment have a disadvantage over others. That being said, when you do elliptical, your knees and your feet is not actually lifting up off the pad. So there's no physical impact going into that.
Right.
Versus you're tromping up and down on this stepper all day long, for an hour in the morning, an hour at night. That's going to eventually start affecting your knees. And
yes,
your
it
hips.
will.
You got to ramp
Someone
up
that's
on
young,
that.
that's in their early 20s, probably isn't going to notice it. But, if I were prepping a master's guy, I would be telling him to get the hell off the stepper. You don't need to do that.
Get on the elliptical.
We adjust your diet, your training, and your supplements in order to get you in shape. We don't have to do hours on the stepper.
Right.
I think the incline treadmill is, a good choice. The bike is actually good. The bike has no impact as well. A lot of people that have knee problems and back problems prefer the bike. I didn't really like it that much. So my go-to was the elliptical.
Right.
Yeah, with me, it's like I noticed that my feet and my knees will hurt if I try to start with 30 minutes on the stairs. So I usually have to do 5 to 10 minutes on the stairs, then do the treadmill for 10, then the bike for 10. And then as I get close to the show, I can phase it towards more intense, less low intensity. So at the end, you're 40 minutes on the stairs, and it doesn't bother me as much.
Right.
But the bike, you only burn like 50 for 10 minutes, whereas on the treadmill, you burn like 80 for 10 minutes. On the stairs, I found was just that you don't burn that many calories. But it is a lower impact, like you said, and you also get a really good quad pump.
Right.
So for those of us who aren't genetically quads, it gets a lot of blood flow to it.
Well, you said age and stuff with doing some of that stuff, and it's your size too. I mean, you said you're 275 pounds. It doesn't take much for you to get going, to get your heart rate up. Somebody who's 180 pounds, a middleweight guy or a welterweight guy like Todd, you might have to do a little bit more in order to get that heart rate up, just because there's less that's moving in motion. For me,
I remember when I worked with Shelby back in 2010, and I remember how fast I was walking on the treadmill. I was a light heavyweight at that time. And I'm thinking to myself now, I'm like, how in the hell did I actually pull that off? And I used to wear, I was always particular about this. Do I think it actually mattered? Probably not. But I always wore a heart rate monitor around my chest, not when you grab the machine.
Right, a real one.
And I struggled to get my heart rate to 125. And that was almost, I would stay below 125 and I was almost jogging. Now, again, as I put on another 50 pound of muscle, it was pretty easy to reach that 130 range.
Right. I remember seeing there was a video. It's Craig Titus, but he was sitting there doing cardio, and you watch him do it, and he can't be doing 1.5 miles per hour. on the treadmill. He's leaning over the treadmill. He's basically like walking as slow as you can possibly walk, like he's strolling through the park, but he is just pouring sweat. And it's like he was a bigger guy too, that it didn't take much for him to get his heart rate up when you're trying to move that much weight.
Yeah, I honestly find the more muscle someone has, the easier they get in shape because your body burns calories.
Right.
Like the amount of muscle tissue you have on your body requires calories to maintain that.
Yes, it does.
Right.
So technically, the bigger you get, you should, like if you're eating 3,000 calories at 200 pounds, you should be leaner eating 3,000 calories at 250 pounds.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. What, Tommy, what do you use for cardio? What's your go-to?
Oh, I'm pretty fucking basic. I have my own treadmill in my house, so I created like a cardio cave, and that's where I would be every morning. I just do fasted low intensity.
Okay.
2.7 miles an hour with a 7 on the incline, and I don't hold on or anything. I do long prep. Like I do 20-week preps, and I'll start with like 3 cardio sessions at 20 minutes a week, and then just gradually increase as needed. I've never done HIIT, and even some days I'll walk outside and do my cardio when it's nice out.
Yep.
I don't feel I need to push it very hard with cardio. I'm naturally an ectomorph, so I lean out really quick. The last 6 weeks is when that's the hardest part of prep for me, because that's the part where you get peeled. But it's a walk in the park for me. I sweat a lot because I wear like 2 hoodies and sweatpants and shit, but I don't have to do the things a lot of people do with cardio.
Right. All right, let's talk. You talked a little bit about, Justin, about you don't believe in depleting and loading necessarily with your body and stuff. So give me a last couple weeks basically of what you're doing diet wise. Again, you're going reactive. So, but are you if you need to restrict carbs, are you going to restrict carbs, or are you pretty strict that you want to stay full right into the show?
It's an as needed basis. So yes, if I need to come down more, and it's not really whether I'm full or flat, but it's more just the conditioning in general. Like if I need to be harder, then obviously the food is going to have to come down.
Yep.
And for the most part, I never really ate a lot of direct fats during prep. So my variable to play with was always carbs.
Okay.
The only fats that I really ate when I was in prep was usually coming from my steak or, the minimal amount of fats, the trace fats in my oatmeal and, like rice and stuff. But, it's not very much.
No.
Right.
So, yeah, like my last couple of weeks, if I do a longer contest prep in the past, like, 10 weeks, by like week 4, when I'm like 4 weeks out, my food typically starts getting increased because my metabolism's getting better and better and better, and I'm just blazing through food. But like when I would do the preps, what I call the right way of hitting the timing perfectly, when I would do 6 to 8 weeks for a contest prep, for the most part, the food would slowly stagger down, and I would get down to maybe like 300, maybe 350 grams. Like that's a regular day.
Okay.
Obviously, my refeed days were much, much higher than that. And I would always make sure I wanted to keep my refeeds out past 1 week out. Like when I was 1 week out or closer, I never wanted to refeed because I didn't want that massive fluctuation going on during my final week.
Right.
So I always tried to set myself up. I want to be like very close to contest shape by 10 days out, like really close.
Right.
And then, when I go into I'd like to be kind of full going into that. That way I don't have to worry about refeeding, and I can just coast on into the show. So, I'll run maybe like 400 grams of carbs, and I would change that with my cardio too. So like if I felt like I was flat, I'm like, I really don't want to do a refeed. It's like Tuesday before my show. It's really not the right time to do that. So I would just say, you know what? The 25 minutes of cardio I'm supposed to do today, I'm not going to do it.
Not going to do it.
And
exactly.
I wouldn't do it.
Okay.
And then 25 to 30 is typically what I was doing at that point. I never did like hours and hours of cardio. Not in many years anyways.
Right.
So, yeah, and then going into it, the last Thursday and Friday, Thursday I would increase the food a little bit. And I never really changed the water. I never changed the sodium. And then Friday I would typically back the water off a little bit. I still never took the sodium out. I think that's a huge mistake. People take their sodium out. It just completely destroys your physique.
Yep.
So many I see people doing, they take their sodium out and they add potassium. I'm not real sure if you're familiar. I mean, as you're a doctor, I'm sure you're familiar with cardiac arrest and what can happen with that. That's very stupid to do that.
1 milligram deciliter difference. A 4, you're alive. A 5.5, you're dead. So
Right.
You better hope it's for.
I've seen guys taking like 200 milligrams of potassium with every meal and having no sodium, having like Lasix and no water. I'm like, dude, you're a heart attack waiting to happen.
Yep.
But,
don't do that. That's like standard bikini protocol out here. And 200 milligrams of potassium every hour, and Lenny and Larry's cookie. It's like, you got to have the cookie, huh? Sodium.
Especially with bigger guys, you can't pull their sodium because that's what's going to keep their muscle full. Maybe you might get away like with a smaller athlete, or maybe even like a bikini girl that's say under 120 pounds. You probably get away perfectly fine by pulling her sodium out, given she has a normal metabolism and not like super fast. But, any heavyweight bodybuilder, you yank their sodium out, you're going to change the way they look in a matter of 6 hours, going from like first place to fifth place.
Right. Well, and they're going to be, that's the difference of being 210 on stage and being 200 on stage. That water is just going to flush right out of them. They're not going to have anything to hold. There will be no glycogen left in their muscles. They're going to be flattened out completely.
Yeah. I mean, so I always left my sodium in, and I would back it off a little bit Friday night, and I would kind of gauge. There's been a couple of shows I didn't change it at all. But normally I would back it off on Friday night, and then I would see how I am on Saturday morning. And if I felt like, I would back it off, meaning like I didn't cut it, so I didn't have like a drastic change. But if I saw something going in a negative direction, I'm up at 6 o'clock on Saturday morning, and the show's at, prejudges at noon. I have a little bit of time to fix things.
Right.
Should it have went backwards?
Okay.
If you've not had any water on Friday and you cut your carbs and you've done something crazy, I'm not even going to go through it. But if you've done something really fucking crazy on Friday and you wake up and you're spoiled on Saturday, you probably just need to go home.
You're done. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, again, if you regress by like maybe 5%, you can fix that. But if you did a complete 180, there's no helping that.
No, because you're not gonna fix that in a matter of a few hours. It's gonna take you a couple of days to fix.
Yeah.
Yep.
So since you don't have to make a weight class at all, what do you do with your water? I mean, you said Friday you back off on the sodium a little bit. Do you cut your water down to like a gallon or a gallon and a half, or do you stay at like 2-3 gallons all the way up?
Actually, contrary to not having to make weight, I'm very particular on looking at the scale. So when no variables have changed on Thursday, like I'm trying to think, so theoretically, when I did the SAT Pro, I think I landed on Wednesday night in California, but I think Thursday morning I woke up and I was around 250. I want to say 256, maybe 257. So that was kind of like my baseline. It's like, okay, I look really good at this weight. I feel like if I come down and just dry out 2 to 3 pounds, this is where I want to be. So I actually do look at the scale. So like if I pull the water out and I'm like, man, shit, I'm down to like 251. Like I've dropped 6 pounds. I look in the mirror and I'm like, yeah, I can see it too. Like I shouldn't have dropped that weight. I think for the most part, I would do around. My normal daily water was around 6 liters, and I think on Friday I would back it off to like 3.5.
Okay. So you're cutting it in half,
You
basically.
went from a gallon and a half to 0.75 gallon.
Yeah.
I've never measured water like that. Like I try and just not change anything until I've always pulled water at like 8 p.m. the night before a show on a Saturday show. I don't know. I've seen different protocols where people like taper their water throughout the week, and they'll have 3 gallons on Monday and Tuesday, and then 2 gallons on Wednesday and Thursday, and then on Friday they'll have a gallon. And I don't know. I saw something John Meadows said about just not to just drink as much water as you've been drinking and go from there.
Right.
Yeah, that's why I keep mine in, as I normally do all the way until Friday.
Okay.
Right. And then you cut it in half on Friday, and And then Saturday, did you just sip water or not have any?
I'll actually probably do. I don't really drink water. I specifically I do this on purpose. I'm not a coffee guy. I don't like coffee. I don't like the taste of coffee, and I don't really like caffeine either. I know that defies the rules of being a human being, but I would always drink black coffee with no creamer, no nothing in it, and I would do maybe 2 cups Saturday morning because I don't know what it is about it, but like the diuretic effect combined with me already being dry, it just kind of put the icing on the cake for me. It always looked better when I would have a couple of cups of coffee. And I think after prejudge, if I know there's going to be 8 or 9 hours, I'll put down maybe a liter of water.
Okay.
At least a 16-ounce bottle. That's a minimum. Like, you got to have that. Like, I won't do less than that.
Yeah, I mean,
but most of the time I can drink a liter.
Yeah.
You mean between your 2 cups of coffee and prejudging, or between prejudging and the night show?
Oh, between prejudging and finals.
Right.
In the morning, I always drink coffee, and I would just, I'd wake up at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and I would have, whatever my meals plan was that day. Typically, it did vary and it did change on the day of the show, if you guys want to talk about that later as well. But I'd get up at like 6 and I'd have a cup, and then like about 8 I would have a cup, and I probably wouldn't have any more after that, until prejudge is over.
Okay.
Okay. That makes sense.
You need to have that water in between. You've been on stage flexing. You're burning up glycogen while you flex. You're gonna eat carbohydrates, in some way, shape, or form. But in between the two, the morning show and the night show, you got to have some fluid to go in there so you can help pull some of those carbohydrates in along with the sodium. So if you don't put any water in there, you're defeating the purpose.
Defeating the purpose.
Yeah. And for you, from a bigger guy, you said 16 ounces.
I think about it. I would always drink probably about 6 to 8 ounces backstage, like within 15 minutes probably of going on.
While you're pumping up.
Get a pump.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I do that too. I usually get just one of the little teeny tiny bottles of water, and I'll sip that while I'm getting ready, and it helps get a pump a little bit easier and stuff. You're pulling just in case you are too dehydrated at that point. You get that little extra water. It's going to go right in right now because your body needs it, and then
something else. Speaking on that, you're talking about getting a pump. This is probably something you don't really hear a lot of people going on this specific topic. But whenever things is very delicate at that point, you're backstage and you're on the money with it. You don't have the energy in the tank to be doing a fucking workout. I see all these guys that basically, you've probably never been to a show in your life, because I know I haven't, who they said, you're going to go on at 12 o'clock, and you actually go on at 12 o'clock.
Yeah, that doesn't happen.
It never works that way.
Nope.
So you're backstage thinking you're going to go on at 12 o'clock, and you start pumping up at, 11:45, and the next thing you know, you're not on until 12:30. You've worked out for 45 minutes. Like that, in
Pump's
my
gone.
opinion, I made that mistake when I was younger. I think we've all made that mistake. We learn from our errors. But I always looked much worse. Like, once you have your initial pump, it's now or never. Like, once it's gone, like, it's similarly as like when I tell you, when you're in the gym and you feel like you're gassed and it's time to go home, you're like, I'm getting like negative effects from my pump. I'm actually looking worse. It's the same backstage. I think, you don't have much water then, and you got everything balanced just perfect. And then when you try to go pull a workout off 30 minutes out, it don't work.
Right. Yeah, I've never been one to go back there and do a whole lot. It's usually, one set of bands. I'll do some curls, I'll do some rear delt stuff, and I'll get get some blood in there, and then I just flex and pose backstage. That's all I do. Just little short, quick flexes and stuff, and sip a little water. You do what?
I see people doing body squats and lunges.
I don't do much flexing or posing backstage because it depends on who your judge is. Like, when Sandy was judging, honestly, Sandy's pretty easy on the athletes. Like, she just runs you straight through it.
Right.
Like, if you're in the first call out, you're going to be off the stage in less than 5 minutes, probably like 3 minutes.
Okay.
So you don't have to worry about it. But like, if Steve's judging, your ass is going to be in that first call out.
You're 25 minutes on stage and one call out.
So I don't want to
rounds minimum.
I don't want to be hitting all these poses backstage and gas myself out.
Right.
In my opinion, the reason I'm using this show as an example, I consider my best look probably the Sacramento Pro, or what was it called, the Golden State? Yeah.
Yes.
So that's 2016?
Yeah, 16. Yep. I felt like, I know for a fact I was in shape, I was dry, and I was also my heaviest, and I pulled a vacuum with that show too. So I feel like that was probably my bet. And Liquid Sun Rays pampered me. I had everything down to a T. Like I came to win that show.
Right.
So I remember backstage, everybody else was pumping up, and me and Josh Wade was just sitting there laying down on the floor. I was eating, I think I was eating some Pringles or something like that. I don't remember. I typically like some type of potato chip because it's doesn't have a lot of volume to it, but it's got a lot of fats and sodium in it backstage. Right. And then about 10 minutes before, I just basically hopped up and kind of took a pump up band for maybe 3 or 4 minutes and walked out. Like, didn't do anything drastic at all.
If you're in shape, you're in shape. And nothing you do backstage is going to make it any better, but it can make it a lot fucking worse.
Same thing.
So I get the sodium and I get the carbs. Why did you want fat before you went on stage for the pump up?
Not particular. I wanted something with a low volume of food that's not going to
distend your stomach.
Yeah, push. I don't want to feel any food in my stomach.
I got you. Okay, so it's not for the fat. It's just that it's the salt, the lack of water, and the carbohydrates is what you were shooting.
Yeah, I mean, like in the past, I've done this and this works well, but like it can sit on you. As I used to take like a cup of pie filler and I would just take some salt packs and add to that. But again, I found that I can eat, a whole bag of potato chips and not feel like I've ate it all.
Right.
Okay, I got you.
That was kind of my go-to on that. Like you see guys doing Chex Mix and stuff. I don't really like Chex Mix, but like I typically just eat Lay's barbecue or Pringles, one or the other.
Yep.
Yeah, because I was a Chex Mix guy specifically because it's got 240 milligrams of sodium and 46 carbs per cup. But there's no fat.
I think the Lay's barbecue has got you beat on that. I think it's probably 350 to 400.
Dude, everybody's gonna be peaking with potato chips.
I'm gonna go.
Yeah, I know. Lay's are giving me a contract.
I'm gonna go to the backstage at the Grand Rapids here in May, and I'm gonna see 40 fucking cans of Pringles laying around backstage.
Yep, no more.
They work really well.
Potato chips now.
All right, guys, we're gonna take a quick commercial break here, and then we will come back with the next part of the show. So we will be back in a minute.
Have you ever wished there was a site devoted to providing true information about bodybuilding? One that shows you what the top bodybuilders are really doing? It's all here at musclementor.net. Nutrition, training, supplements, super supplements, contest prep, final week prep, and everything in between. There's training logs, diet logs, scientific articles, and hours of video footage covering every detail involved with building muscle and losing body fat. Brought to you by prep gurus Justin Harris and Brad Hall, all for only $9.99 a month. That's right, musclementor.net. Let's get freaky. Valhalla Labs at Valhalla-Labs.com. Created by Doctortoddlee himself, champion bodybuilder and biochemist, the best in testosterone support in intra and post-workout nutrition.
And we are back. All right. Got Tommy Styles and Todd Lee and IFBB Pro Justin Compton. Guys, we talked in the first thing about Justin's contest prep and training during prep and some of the things that he likes to do. So we're going to continue along that line, but we're going to go off on a couple other things here. Justin, I know you coach people. Now you're doing a lot of contest prep coaching. You've got you have bodybuilders. Do you have figure, bikini? Do you have pretty much every division covered?
Yeah, I've got a few people in each one of them.
Okay. So, and obviously, you know, some of them are using performance enhancing drugs, and so you know you can able to advise them on that. Let's talk a little bit about that during contest prep. Some of the things you might do as a coach for your athletes. Typically, most people will start it very, very low, and then we'll ramp it up as we get to the show. I know that's what I've always done. Where is there a point where you know, and what are you looking for when you know that you have to ramp up what they're doing?
I'm sure this conversation is going to be attracting a lot of people right now. So, yeah, this is what they all have been waiting for right here.
Right.
I don't really think, to answer that question, when it comes to ramping things up, like, for example, you're taking 500 milligrams of testosterone, which that's, you know, in my opinion, a moderate to a low dose compared to what most pros probably use.
Yep.
Like, you're not going to take 500 at 10 weeks out and then 7 weeks out do 750 and so forth. Like, for stuff like that type of a compound, I consider that to be a base. So whatever you're going to run in the beginning, you're going to run it all the way through. So when you say ramping up, what I think of is that as you get closer to shows, you add in certain compounds that's going to give you that hardening effect that's more androgenic.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So, yes, your total milligrams as you get closer to the show will ramp up, but it's not like you're taking one drug specifically and continuing to boost the dosage of it.
No.
The only thing that you would be doing that with was maybe clenbuterol.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, because obviously after so long it becomes ineffective and you need to increase dosages.
That in T3, if your clients use T3, it just depends on, that all varies from person to person.
Sure.
I got people that actually need a drug that's opposite of T3, and then I got people that the whole fucking bucket load can't help it.
They're eating it like it's Tic Tacs.
How do you determine if they need that other drug other than T3?
That's a good question. That's something that a lot of people get really caught up on. They want to use that kind of stuff, but like, I like to push the other envelopes first. You know, obviously you're on your standard gear going into the show. I don't like to use T3 unless it's a last resort, because I feel like it can have the ability to cause you to lose muscle.
Yep.
So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to manipulate your calories. And once you get to a threshold, you can't manipulate someone's calories so they're eating like 1,000 calories a day. That's not going to work. So if they're eating like 6,000 a day, of course, you have plenty of wiggle room. So you bring the calories down a little bit and you add a little bit of cardio in, and you actually continue doing both. You know, you continue bringing the calories down, you continue upping the cardio until you get a threshold. If when I say a threshold, I have had people do 2 hours of cardio a day. I don't like to do it, but those are the ones who, you know, have lesser metabolisms than others. Ideally, at an hour of cardio, once you break that hour limit, I will probably, as long as the client would be comfortable with it, would have them engage in a little bit of T3.
Sure.
You know, I'm assuming at an hour of cardio, we've already got their carbs low, we've already played with carb cycling, and we still need something to give it a boost.
Yep.
So if the person needs that extra boost to get them into shape, that's when T3 would be incorporated.
Okay. Yeah, that's, I mean, the problem is that most people, they just jump right into it and they start eating fucking 25 micrograms of T3 on the first day of prep, and they're left nowhere by the end of it. And by the end of it, they're suffered so much metabolic damage from their thyroid that, they blow up 40 pounds in 2 days.
A lot of people, if you read the forum boards, read whatever, there's actually a lot of good information out there, but there's also a lot of dumbasses that don't know anything.
Yes.
And people tend to think if you take GH and you take T3, you can cheat on your diet, you can do whatever you want. That is the most unfucking true statement ever.
Yep.
Like, you can take all the drugs you want, but if your diet's not right, I don't care if you take a sink full of oil every day, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nope. That unfortunately, in our society, that's what's become the norm, is with the internet has kind of ruined some of that. Yeah, it might have been secretive, and some guys might have only known, and they were the kind of the guys you went to, but you trusted that you were getting good information, because a lot of these guys have been tried and true methods that they had done over the years, and now everybody's a fucking chemist and everybody's a guru,
honestly, I feel like society has overcomplicated the process.
Yep, I agree.
Much more than what it needs to be.
I agree.
Well, like
Everyone 14 different peptides that I've never even heard of before, and they're trying to they're just trying to manipulate things, to make it easier for themselves. But really, there's no easy way.
Nope.
If you can do a show with 5 drugs, why do you need to do 10?
Right. Right.
Like everyone starts Caber while they start NPP and DECA and shit. It's like, if you don't have the symptom, you don't treat the symptom.
Right.
You don't
exactly.
You don't just start using it because.
It's like they're paranoid. They think it's like a fire extinguisher. It's like, I've never seen it. It's like, I've been doing this fucking 9 years. I've never heard this shit until like 3 years ago. Or like giving blood. It's like, oh, you gotta give blood or you're gonna have a stroke. It's like, who do you think gets this blood with your DECA, Tren, T3? What do you think's gonna happen to these people? You're donating blood. You're not just pouring it down the drain.
Right.
Yeah. All right.
When something like that comes up, with donating blood, I personally never had a very big problem with like my hematocrit, my hemoglobin, red blood cell count. But if everyone's going to respond differently to what they're taking, and if you're having issues with that, you probably just need to see your doctor. I mean, you can donate blood if that's what your choice is, but for one, you need to do your blood work. So if you don't need to donate blood, then you don't need to donate blood. If you want to do it out of the kindness of your heart, that's fine. But if your hematocrit's at 47, you don't need to go and donate every 6 weeks. But if you're at like 57, you should probably see your doctor. And
right.
I'm assuming I have one client who his is, even on TRT levels for 6 months, his is still elevated, and his doctor always gives him like a phlebotomy. Basically, it's the same thing as donating blood, except that blood doesn't go to anyone else. They just pretty much dump it out.
That's different if you're phlebotomizing it. But if the babies inside of a mother growing, getting exposed to Tren when the mother gets blood, are now not going to be little girls when they come out. They're going to be something in between a little girl and a little boy. That's why they had to check a box saying, do you need steroids? Yes. And they don't take your blood.
Right.
They're like, fuck off. But people don't check that box. So they're contaminating the blood supply of the country with all their Tren blood. And it's like pissing me off. And I'm sorry I'm using the soapbox. But
I would assume wouldn't they test the blood?
They would have to.
I would imagine. I mean,
I don't know, man.
Well, they would have
to test it for like viral diseases.
Right.
Like I would assume they would check it for other things too.
They check it all for HIV, and you would think that they would check it for everything that they can possibly check it for, at least before they would give it to somebody else, because why would you want to give somebody something if you don't know what you're giving them?
No, you would. You, the person donating it, has a questionnaire, and you're supposed to check what you've got.
Right. People lie all the time.
Yeah, but you're also supposed to not leave the country within like 3 months. You're not supposed to get a tattoo. Like, there's a bunch of shit that people can lie about, not just
right. I'm pretty sure your basic crackhead that came off the street that wants to give blood for $20 is gonna check all those boxes off, and he's gonna check them all truthfully, so he can't get his $20. No, they need to check the blood. Right.
That just because someone else is evil doesn't make it okay for you to do that.
Right.
It's like if the whole culture is a bunch of shitheads, it doesn't make it okay for you to be a shithead. So phlebotomy, if you're over 55, sure, fuck it, go ahead. Right. But I just think that donating blood to the Red Cross when your blood's poisoned is not ethical. Because if it's too shitty to be in you, why is it going to be okay to give to somebody else?
Right. All right, let's talk about something else. The next one would be diuretics, and you touched on Lasix earlier when you said with people running a bunch of Lasix when their sodium is low and shit, and they're just asking for a heart attack. Diuretics, anything that you would use with any of your clients if necessary, or is it just something we stay away from, or what is it? How would you go about that?
No, it's definitely as a necessary basis. Like Lasix is not on the list. I've never touched Lasix, and I've never told anyone else to do Lasix. again, I don't have any personal experience with it, but from a chemistry standpoint, it's obviously not the right drug of choice for this.
Right.
If you are morbidly obese, you're 400 pounds, 500 pounds, and you're holding a lot of water, yeah, it might be something for you, but not for a bodybuilder.
No.
So the only two that I actually have any experience with, one, very, very little, the other, quite a bit of experience, but Diazide works very well. It's very well controlled. And you don't need near as much of it as people seem to think you do. Like if you've used 2 tabs, you've already went way overboard.
Yeah,
it's too much.
Way overboard.
Yeah, there's obviously some other problems that was going on if you had to use that much.
Yeah, you weren't lean enough.
The other is Alactone, and I really, really despise that because I did use it and I had a bad experience with it.
Right.
And I won't do it myself. I'll never have another client do it. Aldactone blocks aldosterone. So basically, it's going to change the way your body absorbs sodium.
Yep.
So, people want to start Aldactone on a Monday. And the show that I used this for was 2016 Arnold. And I'll admit that was not, even 1 week out, that was not my best 1 week out. But I felt like I was pretty good at that point. And everything is going good, but by Tuesday, I think I dropped 2 pounds. So we increased the food a little bit. By Wednesday, I dropped another 2 pounds. So we increased the food a little bit. And, so Matt was looking at me 24/7 because he actually came down here to Florida. And this is something that, like I said, because I had a bad experience with it, I won't condone it. But obviously other people use it with great success if that's what they choose to do.
Right.
I'm not knocking it. I'm just talking about my experience with it.
Sure.
By Thursday, my weight is tanked completely. Well, I felt however, even though my weight was tanked down, I was 247, maybe, something like that. I felt like I looked good, though. And at that point, though, anything we did after that, it continued to just scale down and down and down. We didn't do very much Diazide with it. I mean, it was very minimal, a half or something like that. And it just shot me straight to the gutter because I couldn't, if you're blocking your aldosterone, you can eat a bucket of salt, but it doesn't really do any good.
Right. So were you flattening out then? I mean, you were losing weight, but were you flattening out as you were going because you weren't able to get any sodium in you?
Okay. I was getting, the muscle bellies were getting flatter. And then as we were trying to compensate for that by adding in more food, it just created a disaster.
Okay. I had a similar thing the one time that I used it too. I ended up using it I only used it for 2 days, and I flattened out really bad, and I ended up looking like shit for it on stage. It didn't work out well. And the same thing, I could not fill out. I just ended up being flat. It didn't matter how much I ate, and my weight was just dropping. That was the Michigan in 2014. And I ended up in 4th place. And if I would have come in, full, we would have been talking about a little bit different story. And it was a bad idea on my part to use. I should have just used nothing at all because I didn't need it. But hey, you always think you need something more. So a bad mistake there.
What doses did you guys use? 50 a day or 25 a day?
Yeah, I was using 52, and it was only a couple of days, and it was a bad idea.
The one time I had access to it, I used 25 on a Wednesday, 25 on a Thursday, 25 on a Friday. That worked great for me, but I didn't stack Diazide with it or anything. So I guess it just has to do with how much muscle belly, because I was 140 pounds, I didn't have a whole lot of muscle to flatten out like Justin was saying earlier. Whereas you guys are heavy and super heavy, it has a much more drastic effect.
Right.
It's not like it's muscle dependent, it's kidney dependent. So the dosage for a little guy would be, different. It's not different from the dose for a big guy because your kidney is the same size. Your kidney doesn't grow with the muscle. So it's good to know because I had always thought it was the holy grail of it because of the mechanism of action and the way it works, different from Diazide. But I do have a protocol that works for Diazide. And since that's all anyone ever has access to, that's just what I use. Yeah. So I won't try to go back to ever finding this Aldactone.
Yeah, I prefer Diazide. If I need it, if I don't need anything, then that's fine. But if I'm already dry coming in, there's the carbohydrates and sodium are going to take care of it, so I shouldn't need it. But if I do need something, no more than a half a Diazide is all I really need the night before, just to finish off the job, and then like you just like
if
to
you're
use.
good at manipulating your natural factors, like what you just mentioned with your sodium and your carbs and your water, if you manipulate those properly, diuretic use should be minimal.
Right.
I mean, I'm assuming, if you're taking some type of anabolic, I'm assuming you would have an estrogen blocker in there too.
Right.
So you shouldn't be holding any, and if you're shredded as well, obviously.
Right.
Fat cells attract water cells. So like if you're shredded and you've got estrogen blockers in, you shouldn't be holding that much water to begin with.
No.
That's the thing, is people think diuretics are like a staple as a part of your prep, but like you said, you should be fucking ready like on that final day. Like honestly, from like peak week isn't anything really. It should just be coasting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be.
It should be, but the problem is that some people, that's when their diet actually starts, and they're and they're trying to severely dry themselves out as much as they possibly can to try to salvage. And if you're fat, you're fat. It's not going to matter how much you dry yourself out. You're still just going to look like fat, but a lot squishier and smaller. That's what's going to end up happening.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
that's a good point. If you're flat, that means you're not fat. Like Justin, how do you, throughout the course of your prep, this kind of touches on what we talked about before the commercial, but do you make changes when you notice yourself getting flat, or do you expect to be flat at times as you're dieting?
Hang on, what did you say? I didn't quite catch what you're asking me.
So I know you track like how your muscles look and if you're feeling full, but there's parts of my prep where I just feel flat for a while. I think that's just because I have to get flat in order to lose the body fat necessary to come in peeled. Is there points of your prep where you just know that you have to, like, you can't always feel full?
Yes, 100%. And honestly, that actually starts at day one. I was actually just having this conversation like yesterday with Roman Fritz.
Dude's an animal.
Yeah, I know. He's actually one of the only bodybuilders I've ever trained with, and I was like, man, this guy's like actually outworking me. Usually I laugh at people. I'm like, really? You call this a workout? But no, Roman, he works very, very hard. And we were just talking about this. Basically, your first couple of weeks into your contest prep, in order to get the ball rolling, you have to, there's no way you're going to have the same off-season fullness as you are in contest prep. Otherwise, you're not going to have a good contest prep.
Right.
So for me, I mean, when you see me guest posing and stuff, I was always like super full and round, but I never could bring that fullness to the stage. Like the amount of fullness I had in the off season, I could never put that on the stage because I wasn't able to, like I said, I had a great metabolism, but I still wasn't able to get peeled like into contest shape without flattening out some in the process.
Right.
Okay.
Now, I've always said that you have to get flat or you're going to show up fat. If you don't flatten out at some point, you're not gonna tap into those fat stores. You're not gonna burn enough body fat, and you're gonna end up coming in softer than what you want and not as lean.
Yeah.
And then it's a guessing game with your water at the end, and most times people guess wrong. So
to put like a spin on this, what I'm hearing is you can't really deplete the body fat without depleting some of your glycogen supplies.
yes.
And if you try to refill your glycogen supplies to full, even during peak week, there's going to be some building of fat in the fat tissue to smooth out some of those lines. There's no way to be 100% glycogen loaded without putting some fat back in the adipocyte.
I wouldn't necessarily say there's no way to be 100% glycogen loaded, but in order to be, I feel like you're better off taking, listen, this is a guessing game, not just with myself and with anyone. So I feel like you're better off to be at 80% full and 20% flat is to take the chance on trying to hit that threshold and getting 100% as full as you can eat.
And spilling over.
Yeah, and once you break that 100%, once you've spilled over, either your gut's distended or you got to fill the water on you, it's too late.
Right.
So I would rather be a little bit flat and be in shape is to take the risk of trying to be an extra 2 or 3 pounds bigger. I mean, it's not going to.
I always shoot.
What?
Yeah. I shoot for 75, so it's funny you said 80. I always say you want to be 75% full. Because if you overshoot 75, you still don't go over 100.
Well,
The amount of food that it would take me to eat to get 100% full, my stomach would not appear good on stage.
No.
Yeah, I understand. If there's so much food, your waist gets bigger just because your intestines fill up before they can process.
You have
Right.
to.
Right.
And say you sort of fill up on Friday and you don't eat anything on Saturday. Well, when I go 12 hours and not 12, say I go 14, 15 hours and I'm fasted, all that fullness you have is starting to fade out anyways.
Right.
Yeah. And that, like, my weight would go from 26 vacuums to like 34 before I hit full, because it takes that much food for me to actually consume. To start big enough to go fully full.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're chasing at that point. You're not actually improving, because you're giving a little to one area, but you're ended up giving a little bit to another area that's negative. So, all right, let's do coming out of a show. Let's say we just did a show. Coming out of the show, typically, do you take some time off if you don't have anything coming up right after that, or what do you do with your training? I mean, do you train? Do you train a little bit, maybe a little bit lighter, because you're more susceptible to injury coming out of the show there? And what do you do diet wise as far as carbohydrate intake after a show?
No, I actually do the exact opposite of everything you just said.
Okay, perfect.
I feel like I always grew. I'd say a 12-month time frame, like the 2011 Nationals, the 2012 Nationals. That's a good example, because I competed at the same time with 1 year difference. I feel like I grew more in those 3 months after the show than I grew in the other 9 months of the year.
100%.
For me, the post-contest rebound, I actually just took a new client on today, and he just competed, and he looks fucking amazing. And I'm happy to get him right now, because I don't really like taking someone on if they've already screwed themselves up good for 5 or 6 weeks after the show. Like, if you can get in fresh right after your contest and you're in shape and get things right, that's a prime time to be able to add muscle. So, like, I get back in the gym again. I don't change my training style. I don't do anything, I said, like 2, 3, 4 rep range. But on the flip side, I don't do that going into prepper in the off season either.
Right.
I never get that low. So, like, I try, and also my warm ups are very, very. I'm slow. I may end up doing 5 warm ups before I consider a working step. Depending on what I'm doing, I make sure that I'm fresh for what I'm doing. So yeah, I'll train really hard for probably 3 months after a show. My food will increase accordingly. It just depends. I mean, if you put on the first week, it's pretty inevitable to gain 5 to 8 pounds if you're training, because again, your glycogen levels are filling back up to that 100% marker that we were just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to gain a little weight that first week. But if it's week 1 to week 2, you gained another 8 pounds, you need to back up off of it. If you're doing something wrong, you're down 16 pounds in 2 weeks. So I would take my initial gain, my initial water weight, glycogen fluctuation the first week, and then I would just simply reverse diet right out of the show. And I kept my metabolism in check by doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's how I was actually able to get away with doing a 6 to 8 week contest prep, much shorter, because everything was functioning like it was supposed to.
Right. Okay.
So, I mean, the training stays the same. The food, as it continually goes up. And if we're using any fat burners, that's the time to either taper them out or get rid of them, depending on what you're using. And, I mean, that's pretty much it. And after that, after about that 2 to 3 month window, depending on how my body feels, if I start feeling my joints aching, I'll let off the gas a little bit.
Okay. And that's what I was.
I'll back my volume down, or sorry, not my volume. I'll train. I'm used to training like 6 and 7 days a week at that point.
Right.
But I'll go back up 4 days a week for 3 months, sometimes 4 months, just to give my body a nice break. And I'm still lifting heavy during those 4 months. I'm just training less frequently.
Right. You're getting more recovery time in there, so your body's recovering. Okay. Yeah, and that's what I was kind of getting at. Is like some people, I know people that take time off the show. Generally speaking, that's older competitors that need that time after the show, because they're beat up after a contest prep.
Yeah.
I personally am not to that point. Every time I compete, I'm back in the gym, usually Monday or Tuesday.
I'm ready to train at the show.
I actually train Saturday night.
Yeah,
I usually have my meal, and when everyone else is getting drunk, I go to the gym.
Right. But I'll get back in there, and I'm not going to train super light. I am going to probably be a little more careful that first week. But as like you said, your body's filling up with glycogen and stuff because you're eating more carbohydrates. I'll utilize that for some just nasty pumps, and I'll train until a pump gets too bad that I can't stand it anymore, and then I'll get out. And usually by the second week, I'm back to doing my normal training, and I'm eating good. Everything's functioning still. And like you said, when you get past that threshold where you start to feel things start to ache a little bit, that's where I'll back it off to like 4 days a week. From there. It's pretty much the same thing for me. I was just wondering if it was something different for you, because I know some pros like to take time off, but generally that's the older guys.
Not necessarily the older guys. I mean, I think Phil takes like 3 months off after the Olympia. He's been doing that for the last 5, 6, 7 years.
Right.
That was something that Ronnie used to do as well.
Right.
Chad had his guys do it. I mean, to each their own. I can't sit here and knock on them because that was obviously two Mr. Olympias and they had great success throughout their careers. That's just not the way I chose to do things. I felt like getting back in the gym. I wanted to be in the gym. I wanted to train, with food and with energy in me. I was ready to go. And I enjoy getting that, pump that hurts. Like, I really enjoy that for some reason. So I was ready to go. Like, I never wanted to take the time off.
Right.
Okay. I think Dorian even said, like, Dorian would have hit it hard. He would keep going hard for
he was back after the show. Yeah, I read an article that he would fly back to his home country, and then Monday he was back in the gym.
Yeah.
And I think Milo said something too, like the biggest growth period you have is probably post-show, like between 3 and 10 weeks post-show, post-rebound.
Yeah.
We think that because you were low and on the way down, your myostatin would be nil. And then it takes 8 weeks for myostatin to get high that it shuts off muscle synthesis. So that might be why you're only gaining that 2 months after the show, and then you're fighting against myostatin the rest of the year.
Right.
So you go prepping.
Yeah.
So by doing 2 shows 6 months apart, you give yourself 2 growth periods a year. And that, I sometimes saw an advantage to doing that rather than, and when I took 2 years off to do a show, that was a total shit show. I just got fat and then lost the fat that I gained. I didn't really get any muscle.
I didn't really like taking a full year off. Like, for me, this is like my personal favorite here. About 8 months was enough time. Like, there was 1 year, that I attempted to, again, rebound out of the show because I needed to get bigger. It's whenever I did junior nationals in 2011, and then that was in June, and then I tried to pull off nationals in November that year. I gained a lot of size right after junior nationals, but I think I actually was downsized by the time I made it to the nationals because this is like a bro science in me talking here. Like, I could be completely wrong. For all I know, I could have had junk supplements, junk gear. I don't really know. But at that point, I wasn't ever going to risk it again. I felt like I didn't solidify my gains that I had made. Like, it was like fresh new muscle. And then I started dieting. Like, basically I did 3 months up, and then I did 3 months back down again. So I didn't really get anywhere with that.
Right.
I think it's true. Even though you're saying it's bro science because there may not be a definitive answer, I think me and Keith talked about this.
The new muscle is always the first muscle to go.
Yep. And you fill a muscle cell with water and carbs, but for the muscle fibers to split and for new contractile proteins to be laid down, it takes longer. So it's like when you break a cell down, you still got the frame, you still got the plumbing, you still got the beams, even if you take the drywall out and the furniture. Likewise, you could store a bunch of furniture in a house and then empty it out again. There's movable parts and then there's permanent parts. And that's like, you can blow up after a show for 2 or 3 months, but then the next 6 months, you kind of lock that in with the cells actually splitting and then the actual contractile elements being filled in. Your drop sets and stuff like that. You're donating nucleus from the satellite cells to cause the cell to have the structure necessary to support all that additional stuff.
Right.
Like, I noticed I blew up to 191, which isn't a lot of weight, after this show. And over the next 4 months, 5 months, I didn't gain a single pound. But everyone's telling me I'm bigger. And I think one of my lifts went from like 245 for 4 incline to 245 for 12 incline after a second set.
And if you're putting on that weight and you're gaining strength, you're gaining muscle. You're actually gaining muscle at that point.
Yeah.
So I had to put the size on to the 191, and then it densified, or it increased in density, and it became harder muscle tissue, less intramuscular fat, less intramuscular water, less carbohydrate base, less body fat in between the cells. And then basically, I'm still 191. It just looks way bigger and I'm way stronger.
Right.
And I think what you're saying, you came down as soon as you went up, so that solidification never actually happened. And I don't, even though you follow science, I think that there is a scientific way we could express that without, and then they have tested elements of it, but they're not testing bodybuilders, certainly not one of your caliber, to see with muscle biopsies exactly what's happening after the show.
Yeah. All right. Guys, got anything else? Justin, you got anything else you want to talk about?
No, I'm pretty much open to whatever. I mean, whatever you guys want to throw out there.
All right. The only thing I had left was when we talked from is horror stories and mistakes that you've made and learned from. You talked about some of those as we went along, but give me a horror story, either you or somebody you know or somebody you've coached from prep where things just went terribly wrong at the end, because that seems to be always, everybody's always got one horror story that it's just like, Jesus, what went wrong? And they know what went wrong, but they end up learning from it, hopefully.
I wouldn't really call them horror stories. I mean, I have two events that I wasn't happy with the turnout. Even though one of the shows I won, I still wasn't happy with it. Again, it's not a horror story. It's more like a learning experience.
Right.
Because, you don't really, as a bodybuilder, you don't really know, you don't have the knowledge that you have if you've never lived it or at least done it to other people. Like, you don't read this shit in a book and then figure it out. Like, when I did the Kentucky Muscle in 2010, and again, like I said, I don't consider it a horror story, and I don't really consider it a bad experience. I just consider it a learning lesson for me.
Right.
That we did like a keto-style diet. We did a lot of cardio. I went from like 230-ish, like low 230s, and I mean, no, I wasn't in contest shape, but I also wasn't chubby either. And I think I got down to like, I weighed in at like 193 Friday night. So I was probably like 188 on stage.
Right.
I mean, it was way too much weight. Like, if you saw my start, that's another example. I said when people lose 50 pounds and you wonder where it went to. I mean, that was more or less taking a guy with a metabolism who could handle a significant amount of food and then just starving him to death. I mean, of course, you're going to shrink. Doesn't matter what gear you got in. Doesn't matter what you're doing. Like, you're going to inevitably get smaller if you're not fueling that. So I remember that show we did around 300 grams of protein, like 30 to 50 carbs a day, and like 30 grams of fat. And then we had a once a week like carb up. It was like a cheat meal, and that was it. Not like a carb up, just a cheat meal.
Right.
And the cardio was like 2 hours. And then the following prep was for junior nationals. And I was doing like 400 grams of protein, like 500 carbs, half the cardio, and half the fat burners. Right. And I was like 20 pounds bigger, and I was equally as hard. Right. And that was a good learning experience for me. And then another, it's not a horror story, but it's more of a learning experience, is when I did nationals in 2011. Basically, we started pulling food on that, and my weight was dropping really fast. We didn't really refeed. Long story short, I didn't get fed the way I should have been fed. So, like, my weight was falling like 5 pounds a week.
Oh, geez.
And cardio continued to be increased, and the food continued to get decreased. I mean, I wasn't getting harder. I was kind of going through that skinny fat phase, except it never actually kicked out of that. It just kept getting smaller and softer.
Right. Yeah, I've seen way too many people that happens to them, and it's the funny thing is that it's usually not them making the fucking mistake. It's whoever's advising them making the mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the other things I've seen with prep, and if you're going to travel, like if you're an amateur and it's not a national or a pro qualifier, you don't need to be getting on an airplane to do a show. There's going to be local shows in your area, just to keep it simple and keep it easy. Because when you travel, you have a lot of different complications that's going to come with that when it comes to competing.
Yeah.
So you don't have to get on an airplane to compete. Myself, I have had delays, layovers, cancellations, and flights, and all that just adds a lot of stress that you really just don't need. And then guess what? You think your flight's 6 hours and it turns into 18 hours. But nobody packs 12 meals with them on, as a carry-on.
No.
So you can run out of food. A lot of things that can go wrong. So again, if you're not like getting ready for like a national show and you have to travel, there's no reason for me to travel from like Florida to Ohio to compete at a local level.
No.
Like I said, the airplanes, the flights, if anyone that's actually competing and you're flying to the show, my recommendation, just because of my personal experience, is if you have a Saturday show, you need to leave on Wednesday. I know that sounds like way overkill, but you also need to take into consideration your body has to adapt to the climate that you're in as well. Because when I did nationals in 2011, I was in Kentucky and it was cold, it's really cold. And when I flew all the way down to Miami, Lord God, I'm sweating like I melted away.
It's 90 degrees outside and humid. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and not only that, but the water retention that can come from flying. You got to account for that too, because you're going to have to get that fluid back out of your system.
It's going to be a little different on how much water they hold on the flight. So don't count on flying in on a Friday night on Saturday.
Right.
I think too, because it's such a big point.
Well, I've heard people that have done that where they're like, I flew in for a Saturday show and I got there like Friday afternoon, and I'm just like, you're never going to get all that water out of you. You're walking off the plane. You're just you might as well be a buffalo. At that point.
Well, the longest flight I ever had to go to, the longest one on record, I guess, is Hong Kong. But at the time, the first time I went to Australia was 2015. And I remember having a conversation with Sean Roden. He was trying to give me some pointers and some tips.
Right.
Before the flight, he said, you need to go get everything compression. Get a compression, long sleeve compression shirt, get compression pants, compression socks. They can do all that stuff. And honestly, it didn't help me one bit.
No.
I wasn't expecting it because we did Columbus on a Saturday, and I'm on I'm rebounding from Columbus because I did my best to try to peak at that show too.
Right.
So I'm rebounding a little bit on Tuesday, and then I hop on this plane for 24 hours. I remember I left Columbus at 252 pounds. I got to Australia, and the driver said, according to the driver, Tony Doherty wanted me to make an appearance at the gym before I even went to the hotel, which didn't really like that idea too much.
Right.
I did it. I got to the gym, and I pulled my sweatpants off, and I looked at my ankles, and I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
This is bad.
Cankles.
And I hopped on the scale, and I changed it from kilos to pounds, and I was 265. That's 13 pounds in 24 hours.
Right. And it's all water. It's all fluid.
Thankfully, that was on, I think that was on Wednesday, or maybe it was a Thursday. I just know that when I saw that scale and I looked at my ankles, I was on the verge of calling the promoter, and I was going to say, hey, I'm going to have to just reimburse you on this flight, and I'm going to have to pull out of the show because, trust me, you don't want me walking on the stage looking like this.
Right.
Like, I'm going to disgrace your Arnold. So, thankfully, though, I went home, or not home, I went back to the hotel. I slept for like 10 or 12 hours. I woke up, I think I was like 258, 257. I'd already shed off like 7 or 8 pounds.
At that point, pretty much all you got to do is increase your water intake a little bit to cut that flushing effect, and then that's where, a diazide would come in. But you had enough time. Yeah, that's the key, is you had enough time to do it.
I think for that particular show, I ended up doing 2 total.
Yeah. All right. You got anything else, guys?
I'm probably thinking about 1,000 things after we get off the phone, but not right now.
All right. Tommy, you got anything?
No, same
Okay.
thing. I'm good.
All right, man. Well, really appreciate you coming on again, Justin. That was
Absolutely.
love having you on because it's definitely the shows that you've been on have probably been some of our best episodes as far as information and stuff. So definitely we'll have you on again here whenever you want to come on. You just let me know and we'll get you right on. So Tommy, thanks for coming on tonight. Short notice. I texted you today about it. And,
All right, man. Thanks for having me.
yeah.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
So, all right. So this has been the Weekly Grind Podcast sponsored by Valhalla Labs at valhalla-labs.com. And for Dr. Todd Lee, Tommy Stiles, and Justin Compton, I'm Keith Fabbri saying thank you for listening to podcasts. Get on the Facebook page, listen to all the old podcasts, and give us some comments and let us know what you think about this one and all the other ones. So, guys, we'll see you later. Thanks. Everybody keep grinding.